Entertainment for Saturday evening on BBC1. At 5:20, the Rod and Emu Show with guests Barbara Dixon and David Grant. At 5:55, Jim will fix it. Mark Cayley gets his wish to be a suitcase at an airport. And Mark Ranson feels the effects of G-force. At 6:30, a change of programme. The comedy classic Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. Frank is followed home by a dog.
He was standing at the front gate. I couldn't just leave him there, could I?
Yes, well, you should have taken him to the police station.
I did. And then I brought him back again.
At 7:05, the action film is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Well, that ought to do it. Think you used enough dynamite there, Butch?
At 9:05, a new series, Driving Ambition. Donna has plans for the family Mini.
Well, I intend to race it against other cars. In a proper race on a proper racetrack.
And at 9:55...
Join me for welcome. My guests will be Richard Bryars, Gerald Priestman, and from the United States, Joan Rivers.
At 10:45, Match of the Day features the games between Leicester and Watford and Chelsea against Oldham. And with the late-night horror Super Beast at 11:35, this is Saturday evening on BBC1.
And so now at 5:05, it's time for the news on BBC1 with Jan Leeming.
A man has died in a bomb explosion in Armagh City in Northern Ireland, but it may have been a mistake. The booby-trap bomb went off this morning after the man, a partner in a firm of undertakers, had driven a car out of the company's garage in Armagh City. He wasn't a member of the security forces, but his partner was a former member of the Ulster Defence Regiment and may have been the IRA's intended victim.
Mr. Herbert Burrows was well known in Armagh. He ran an undertaker's business with his brother and a partner. This morning he went to prepare a limousine in readiness for a lunchtime wedding booking. He'd driven the car out of the garage when the booby-trap bomb exploded. The force of the blast hurled the 37-year-old father of two over a wall and across the road. He died instantly. It seems the IRA planted the device inside the garage. Before approaching it, the army had to check for more booby traps. Mr. Burrows had no connection with the security forces, but his partner had once been associated with the UDR. Mr. Burrows was frequently seen at the head of police and army funerals in Armagh, representing his firm of undertakers. He could have been killed for that reason, but it's more likely he was murdered by mistake, that the bomb was intended to kill his partner.
Animal rights activists are being blamed for damage estimated at £10,000 at the home of an Essex man. They apparently thought he was responsible for exporting dogs to Nigeria. The attack coincides with a demonstration today calling for an export ban. Tony Skase reports.
The conference was held specifically to discuss the growing trend to include peace studies in the school curriculum. Many teachers were present, and the literature on display included pamphlets issued by the Ministry of Defence. It's thought that up to a...
I'm so sorry, we had the wrong film there. We may be able to return to that one. Meanwhile, I'll continue with a Mideast story. The French Foreign Affairs Minister is going to Beirut today to discuss the continuing presence of the 1,300 French troops there. Claude Chesson will be trying to organise what he's called a dignified withdrawal of the French contingent following the Soviet veto of a United Nations peacekeeping force last Wednesday. Despite the Syrian-backed ceasefire announced yesterday, fighting across the Green Line separating Muslim West and Christian East Beirut has been as heavy as ever. 7 people were killed during the night. Diplomatic activity throughout the Mideast has been continuing to try to enforce the ceasefire so that talks on the country's future can resume. The Education Secretary, Sir Keith Joseph, has criticised schools which make peace studies a special part of the curriculum. At a London conference of the National Council of Women, he condemned what he said were attempts to exploit the peace issue in the classroom. Peter Gould reports.
The conference was held specifically to discuss the growing trend to include peace studies in the school curriculum. Many teachers were present, and the literature on display included pamphlets issued by the Ministry of Defence. It's thought that up to a quarter of the country's education authorities now encourage teachers to discuss the subject with their pupils. But Sir Keith warned that political views should not be promoted in the classroom.
I deplore such attempts to trivialise the substance of the issue of peace and war, to cloud it with inappropriate appeals to emotion, and to present it so one-sidedly that if the teacher actually adopted the guidance, he or she would be guilty of indoctrination.
Sir Keith said he deplored attempts to preach one-sided disarmament to primary pupils with the use of such slogans as "babes against the bomb," and said parents should not hesitate to complain.
We seem to have sorted out our film now. The animal rights activists who are being blamed for damage estimated at £10,000 at the home of an Essex man. They apparently thought he was responsible for exporting dogs to Nigeria. The attack coincides with a demonstration today calling for an export ban. Tony Skase reports.
In an early morning raid at Chigwell, campaigners attacked cars, including a Rolls-Royce, with paint stripper. Later, animal rights activists claimed responsibility, alleging that the owner, Mr. Clive Bourne, was the boss of a company which exported dogs to Nigeria. Protesters daubed slogans on Mr. Bourne's home. He said he was only a cargo handling operator at Manston Airport and reacted strongly to the attack.
Absolutely horrified and disgusted. I'm afraid they've picked the wrong person and the wrong company. We purely handle the dogs at Manston. We have no involvement with the selling or buying of dogs. We actually haven't even handled any dogs since October. We don't even carry the dogs.
In London, 600 protesters took part in a march calling for a ban on the export of guard dogs to Nigeria. The organisers denied being involved in the Essex vandalism. They said dogs suffered from heat, overwork and undernourishment in Nigeria. They delivered a wreath to the Nigerian High Commission demanding that the trade should be stopped.
Scotland have won the Rugby Triple Crown for the first time in 48 years. In Dublin, they scored 4 tries to Ireland's 1. The victory was a personal triumph for Roy Laidlaw. He became the most capped Scottish scrum half and celebrated by scoring 2 tries. Commentator Bill McLaren.
Deans throws long, Paxson, Campbell charges on. Laidlaw goes. Laidlaw cuts back, going for the line, it's a try! Laidlaw going again, and he's done it again!
Laidlaw was injured and substituted at half-time, but his tries were enough to set up the biggest Scottish victory ever against Ireland in Dublin. In Paris, France scored their 3rd championship victory, beating England 32-18. After Wednesday's soccer violence in the city, 1,000 extra police were on duty, but the crowd was entirely good-humoured. They were treated to a display of fast-flowing football by the French galleon Escabora.
Escabora, Sella, Codonu, Estève menacing, Estève with pace. I don't think they'll catch him now.
That was the 3rd of 5 French tries.
And they go again from Joannel, set up by Dubroca. L'Escabora, Begu is there. That rounds it off the shore. 5 tries to 1. The chanting, the clapping in unison by the French crowd. 45,000 here, but here's England, and this shows what they can do. Dusty hair from Bali, and dusty hair all the way. Why leave it so late?
In the Karachi Test, spinner Nick Cook has brought England back into the game against Pakistan with 4 cheap wickets.
Cook. Number once again, the people and he's out.
Pakistan's danger man Zahir Abbas was Cook's next victim by going for a duck. Alan Lamb taking the catch. Mohsin Khan tried to hold the Pakistan innings together with a half-century, but he too fell to Cook's spin.
Mohsin, and Mohsin is out.
Mohsin is out. At the close of play, Pakistan were 131 for 5, with Cook taking 4 for 29. That's the news for the moment. I'll be back at 10 to 9.